Friday mailbag, which Big Ten football coach has the hottest seat? We'll discuss it coming up.
You are Locked On Nebraska, your daily Nebraska Cornhuskers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, good morning, happy Friday, and thanks for making Locked On Nebraska your first listen today and every day. It's part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, good morning. Welcome in. It is Friday, last day of February. I'm Mitch Sherman from The Athletic, Connor Happer of 1620. The Zone is with me. As Connor said, it's a mailbag Friday. Lots of comments on Thursday that we received via email and throughout the week. So thank you very much. We heard quite a bit from our listeners and viewers after yesterday's show that Patrick Stewart, the actor, is still alive. So apologies there.
Good job.
If I led people down a road to thinking that their favorite Star Trek captain had passed on, and he still is not the general manager of the Nebraska football team.
Now we're going to call that guy Pat, manager. Right? We're going to call Pat Stewart, the GM, Pat Stewart, right?
Yeah, for sure. He was listed on the Patriots site as Patrick, but all indications that I've received, I heard from some people in the NFL community who reached out within my company at The Athletic to kind of inform me a bit about Pat Stewart, and he was referred to by all as Pat. So he's going with Pat. I think it's to differentiate him from the actor.
The Star Trek guy. Yeah, that makes sense. All right, we got good questions. Let's hit them, Mitch. What do we got today?
Yeah, we're going to start off with Meg. I want to lead off because we appreciate all of our female viewers and listeners to the Locked On Nebraska pod. So Meg says on email, what are mat drills? Please explain. I appreciate it.
Yeah. So they talked about this pretty deeply on the Urban Meyer, the Triple Option podcast. And you know how coaches are, like, they'll drool over stuff like this, especially old school coaches like Urban Meyer and Matt Rule. But it's basically, and Mitch, you could correct me if I'm wrong here, or if there's something else that we should highlight. Like, it's basically a series of competitions where your team is split into teams, and they're hard. I mean, that's basically the long and short of it. There's going to be a lot of things where you're going to work very, very hard. Like that's kind of the story. Like
it's conditioning. Yeah.
It's conditioning. Yeah.
It's non-football related. There's no football involved. Basically you're running, flipping over tires. You could be doing it in competition. You could be doing it in a line across the goal line. The one that they always like to show on social media is the players like diving onto the turf. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot to it, but basically you're getting in shape. So you're coming out of like the general winter conditioning, lifting, running, and you're going into the next phase, which is spring practice, being on the field. So this is kind of a transition between those. Now they stay in the weight room, but that's not the mat drills. So I think like by the literal definition, it's something that you would do on a mat, but like it's MAT. Like when this first happened, when Matt Rule came to Nebraska, I was like, are these like the mat, like the MATT drills? Because Nebraska had never, they'd certainly done this before, but they'd never referred to it as mat drills. So that's like an old school way of referencing it. And it goes back with him, at least it goes back to Penn State and his playing days. And it's something that Joe Paterno did. Now you have this whole element of today's college football where you don't want to run these guys into the ground too hard because they can go and transfer in April. So I know that some of the coaches have that in their mind. Like, is the mat drill going to be a thing of the past, like spring games and perhaps all of spring practice fairly soon? Because you could be concerned about running guys off through this winter period, which I guess if you decide to leave the program because the mat drills were too hard, then maybe that's going to be a blessing for everyone.
100%. those things are not going away. Not while Matt Rule is here, or not while there's rules that allow them to do this sort of thing. So, yeah, they love it. Old school coaches love it. It was so funny. Urban Meyer was like, "You guys really old school like Matt Rules?" And Matt Rules like, "Oh yeah, old school Matt Rules." It's like, "Oh, that's awesome." There were some guttural noises coming out of that podcast for a couple minutes. So
yeah, coaches in their 40s, 50s, they love it. They it happened to them when they were players, and they want the guys in there who are 20 years old to experience the same thing. So it's about accountability, really. That's what it is. So
yep.
Chris on YouTube says, with all the spending and revenue sharing, is the program still going to be able to cover the cost that it needs without the school pitching in? Also, why did Marcus Satterfield not receive a pay cut? He's still making OC dollars.
I love this question because it certainly tells you the answer of hey, was that real when Troy Danon said that they needed the money to have the extra home game and the 20%, all that stuff is like, yeah, I think they're okay. Nebraska has the biggest staff that it's ever had. They're going to pay their new general manager a lot of money. They're adding in. They've added associate head coaches. They've added not only strength and conditioning and nutrition and now, I mean, I would imagine that GM thing develops into a whole front office staff, something like that. Right. It's huge. It's a huge operation. It's going to be, Nebraska is going to spend not only a lot of money to have its coaching staff, but it's also going to spend probably about $30 million all told on its football roster. And they can. So the short answer to this question is, why are they still making, all this money? Because they can. It's the contract and how the contract works.
Because they have great support, because they sell out games, because they get tens of millions of dollars from the Big Ten every year, upwards of $60 million from the Big Ten every year to be a part of the TV contract that the league works under. So this is why there's not a whole lot of ground to stand on when Ohio State and others want to complain about playing at noon every week. You're getting a huge check, and at the end of the day, that's why Nebraska will not have to borrow from the university to handle rev share, at least not in the current climate, not as long as it continues to sell out Memorial Stadium. And Marcus Satterfield's not getting a pay cut because he's under contract to make $1.4 million in 2025. You sign somebody to a contract. If he had left the school and just gone and sat at his house in wherever, then he still would get paid $1.4 million. So you might as well put him to work as the tight ends coach. And by the way, Dana Holgorsen thinks he's a good tight ends coach, and so does Matt Rule. So we'll see how that plays out in 2025 on the field.
Yeah.
From Michael,
utilize him. Go ahead.
Yeah. From Michael on email, what is the likelihood that we see a quote student athlete miss games for tax evasion in the next 5 years? At what school do you see that as most likely to happen?
I would imagine that there will be the proper education, if not full blown help on doing that sort of thing from the university. If you're in the rev share and if you're getting paid from the university, they already have programs in like that for the student athletes that are making a bunch of NIL money at this point. I can't imagine that would slip through the cracks. But you never know. You never know. It's college football.
You can give them advice and you can guide them along, but ultimately I think they've probably still got to pay their taxes, and they are young, and so a lot of them are going to have holes burning through their pockets when they get those checks. So I don't doubt, Michael, that there are going to be some college football players and basketball players who have tax issues in the years to come. Now, are they going to be in federal prison? Are they going to be missing games? I don't know that you're going to see somebody suspended. They might get in trouble with the government. They might get put on a program that causes them to have to pay back a bunch of money, but it's not necessarily grounds to suspend them from competition. Perhaps we'll see how it all plays out. I do think yes, and this is probably more the point of your question. Like, are there going to be athletes who have problems with this? And the answer, like in any walk of life, I mean, for sure, there will be. There probably already are, just a couple of years into this stuff, and now that we're getting into rev share, so there's some states that are taking actions to want to not have income tax on rev share money, which to me is ridiculous. But they're still going to have to pay federal income tax, and they're going to have to do it. Like, you can't get out of that. There's things you can get out of. You can't get out of that. So, you say at what school, and you want us to like name the school that's going to be the most reckless. I don't know. Like, I think the schools, the power schools, the ones that have the money to pay players with rev share money, are also going to have the resources in place and probably have their stuff together well enough so that they don't, it just doesn't happen on their watch. Like, if it happens, it's because the athlete was extremely negligent in not taking the advice of the professionals within the university who showed them how to do this. But
Agreed.
yeah, I don't know where it's going to happen, but there'll probably be some issues down the road. Let's get
to
one more from Michael before we go to break. Same Michael, on email. He had two questions. He says, I was surprised to see Luke Fickell get a big extension. Is there a Big Ten coach who has a seat hotter than his headed into 2025?
Oh boy. I mean, we have a new coach at Purdue going into the season, and is there too many other new head coaches in the Big Ten coming up this year? I can't imagine. So
no,
I'm thinking of it right now.
That's the only new coach in the Big Ten. I'm thinking of the schools out west. They've all got their coaches back. You think about the old Big Ten East, right? That's the only Chris Ault, the only new coach in the Big Ten this year.
Yeah, Barry Odom, right? They hired Barry Odom.
Barry Odom, yeah. Wrong former Nevada coach that I tagged there. Barry Odom, the ex-Missouri coach.
I mean, so if you think about it, like think about all those, you go through the schools, like Rule's not on a hot seat, but it's obviously, it's getting warmer. Ferentz would never be on a hot seat. Neither, like you could just go through all the names, unless I'm missing something, Fickell.
Ryan Day.
Yeah. Ryan Day is just like on a perma hot seat, I guess.
Ryan Day just won the national championship, but he's got the hottest seat in the Big Ten because he's lost to Michigan 12 years in a row. It's not that many.
Honestly, yeah. Like at those programs at Ohio State and Penn State, like things could go south pretty quickly. So like they're always close to the fire. But in the traditional sense of the hot seat, yeah, I think that's right. I guess it would take a pretty big disaster this year for Luke Fickell in order for him to go, but it's within the realm of possibility.
So Wisconsin just gave him a 1-year extension through 2031, but that's written into his contract for him to receive that. He gets an annual review, and he's rewarded a 1-year extension, kind of a rollover, if he has, quote, performed satisfactorily based upon the athletic director's recommendation and the athletic board's approval. So it was just kind of a standard deal. He didn't get it based necessarily on the Badgers' finish last year. It's like just kind of keeping this thing moving down the line. They're not planning to fire him, but he's being watched. Like, he needs to win.
Definitely. All right. Quick time out here. We'll come back. Still plenty to cover on a Friday mailbag of the Locked On Nebraska podcast. All right, first, Connor Happer here for Fabric. Life moves fast, especially when you have a family. One day you're watching your kids take their first steps, and before you know it, they're off to college. That's why they're secure. That's why securing their future is so important. Fabric by Gerber Life makes it simple to get term life insurance that fits your family's needs. With Fabric, you can apply for term life insurance online right from your couch. You can do it right now while listening to this podcast. You could be covered in under 10 minutes, and in many cases, no health exam is required. You can get $1 million in coverage for less than $1 a day. So protecting your loved ones does not break the bank. Join thousands of parents who trust Fabric to help protect their families. and apply today in just minutes at meetfabric.com/lockedoncollege. Meet, MEET, fabric.com/lockedoncollege. Policies issued by Western Southern Life Assurance Company, not available in certain states. Price is subject to underwriting and health questions. All right, welcome back. Connor Happer, Mitch Sherman with you here on a Friday, Locked On Nebraska podcast. Back to the questions we go. Our dear friend Vince from Napa is chiming into the show yet again. He says he enjoys the show. And yes, we will continue to allow you to contribute if you continue to ask questions in the mailbag. We love the common mailbag returners. Vince asks, since offensive players appear to have more clearly defined roles with Dana Holgorsen as the offensive coordinator, he says, I could see Emmett Johnson becoming Nebraska's first 1,000-yard rusher since 2018. Buy or sell?
Well, I could see it. Because Emmett's the only guy at this point who's got experience in the backfield, and they're going to lean on him heavily. But I don't think that Nebraska's offense is going to be favorable to have a 1,000-yard rusher unless there is a back who has separated himself so much that you really have no choice but to lean on him. And I don't think that's Emmett. No knock on him, but I think he's a very good back. I think he adds a lot into your run game, to your pass game. But I don't think he is the kind of back where you're going to say, all right, we're going to give this to you 22 times a game. Go out there and run for 125 yards, 140 yards. We expect that. And then over the course of a year, you're going to get 1,000. It's not him. And I don't think it's the Nebraska offense. We'll check back in December and see if I'm proven wrong. I might be. He may turn into that back. But right now, I think he's like a 700-800 yard back. And then they're going to look for a 500-yard back and a couple other guys who can do stuff.
Yep. If you're thinking, hey, look at the last 3 games last year, and they did ride him a little bit more, and the offense was, there seemed to be some more running room with Dana Holgorsen as the offensive coordinator, and you just apply that over the entire season. I think it's a little bit of a dangerous game. I think we've done that before. For the record, I don't think it should be that difficult for Nebraska to have a 1,000-yard back. There's no way that they shouldn't have, that they've had 0 1,000-yard backs in 8 years now, or whatever it's going to be. It's absolutely absurd. But I agree with everything you just said. Emmett Johnson he played at Nebraska in his freshman year in 2022. It didn't have a carry. So basically we're talking about over 2 years. He just got over 1,000 yards in those 2 years. He's got 1,009 yards. He had 117 carries last year. I don't think he's a 200 carry a year guy. I don't think that's the best use of him. So I'll say sell on Vince's proposition.
Yep, I'm with you.
Okay. Let's go to Jeff on the email. Big fan of your show. Thank you. Listen to it each day. We call those everydayers, by the way. I have a question about the Memorial Stadium turf. It's my understanding that the artificial turf now in place will be torn out after this coming season, 25 season. I was under the impression that the Huskers will install a grass field for 2026. It is now my understanding, he has many understandings, that the field will be matrix helix turf in 2026. Can you please clarify the turf situation?
I think you've got it, Jeff. I think everything you said there is my understanding that you're correct, that there was initially a plan to go grass in 2026, but that some of the construction has been pushed back, and Nebraska's yet to even announce the details of its plan. We've heard little tidbits get out from Troy Dannon primarily and a little bit from Matt Rule. They want to go to grass. They will go to grass, but they're not going to put grass in and then undertake a big construction project where they've got to drive all kinds of heavy equipment over that grass and ruin it. So the turf needs to come out. Rule wants the turf out. He wants this more, whatever this matrix helix stuff is more conducive to the health of his players. So even if it's going to be in for a year or two, they're going to take out the field turf and put matrix helix. That's tough to say 10 times. Into the stadium until they have the bulk of construction done. And then when it's like a new Memorial Stadium, voila, there will be grass. So there you go.
I think, that's what it sounds like. As long as we kind of have the understanding that it's because of the construction that they're not they're not doing that right away. The end zones will be red before then, though. Those will come with the Matrix Helix turf, right?
I think that's coming this year, actually, and I don't believe they're tearing out the turf. Let's ask Matt Rule about this in the spring, or Dannon, if they're actually going to have new turf in the stadium in 25. I think that Jeff is right, and it's 26, but it's going to look different. Like, can you just paint the field turf? I would think you would have to put in new turf in order to have the different colors that Nebraska's.
It's just not permanent, right? Like
they painted stuff on the turf last year, like they had the 1890 logo on there for a few games. So yeah, you can do that. I think Jeff's right on all of this. I think the Matrix Helix stuff's coming after 25, and then the grass whenever they're ready to be done with construction. And I think even like where the field sits, because of how big this project's going to be, the undertaking, that you may see the field go down a little bit when the grass comes in. There's a lot to still be ironed out, and I think we're going to get more details in the summer.
Let's get some more details coming up in spring ball when we're around a little bit more. A couple more questions this segment. Here's Scott on email. What do you think about moving the ball back to the 30 or 40 yard line to start OT instead of the 25? He says right now you could start at the 25, gain 0 yards, and still kick a makeable field goal. Yeah, you can.
You can.
Make sure you gain exactly 0 yards and you don't lose 50 yards.
Did that happen?
3rd and 43 in overtime.
Yeah, you can't kick a field goal. You can't kick a field goal on 4th and 47.
The other game that I think of when it comes to Nebraska kicking field goals in overtime is the Colorado game in 19 out there, where they were backed up so far it ended up being like a 50-yard field goal with their backup kicker, and it just had no chance. Like, how have they put themselves in position to kick 50+ yard field goals in overtime multiple times?
I think we should take Nebraska out of the equation when we discuss this because of its overtime challenges. Even a 42 or 43 yard field goal, if you get 0 yards from when the overtime starts, is not a sure thing for Nebraska, and it's especially not a sure thing in overtime. So I'd be okay. I think it would make overtime more entertaining if you started at the 30 or the 40, and you then, to Scott's point, would not be able to just take the air out of the ball if your opponent failed to score and kick a field goal. I like the idea of making both teams, no matter the situation, have to gain a few yards at least. So I'd be cool with it. I don't know that they're going to make that change. Like, I do think that overtime's a little stale right now in college football. So I'm down with what he suggests.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I don't have any need to move the yard line at the moment, but definitely need to address overtime and get that thing straight and keep it there for a couple of years. All right. Well, we have 3 questions.
Change.
We have 3 questions left.
Well,
I do not like change. I hate it. 3 questions left. We'll get to them on the other side here in the Locked On Nebraska podcast.
All right, a minute here to tell you about PrizePicks, because March basketball is here. We can say it now and really mean it. Tomorrow, Saturday, it is March, and there's no better way to get in on the action than with PrizePicks, the best place for daily fantasy sports. With PrizePicks, you pick more or you pick less on at least 2 player projections, and if you're right, you can win up to 1,000 times your cash. Give it a try. It's fast, easy, and it keeps every game exciting. In games this week, for instance, maybe you want to take a look at the NBA. Maybe you see Devin Booker, put him for 26 points, more than 26. Maybe you take LeBron James for less than 25. It's that easy. I love how you can make your picks in less than 60 seconds and then stay engaged for 2, 3, 4 hours. Pick multiple games. You can be on the app all night watching the money roll in. So download the app today. Use the code LOCKEDONCollege. Get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONCollege for $50 after you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks. Run your game. Welcome back. Friday edition of the Locked On Nebraska podcast. Mitch Sherman, Connor Happer with you here to finish out the week. We will go right back into the questions. Another one from Scott. He says, this is on email, playoff idea. Divide the Big Ten into 3 pods of 6 schools. 18 divided by 3. Yep, that's right.
You got it.
First place in each pod gets 3 of the 4 automatic qualifiers. Okay, I'm following. The next best 2 schools, regardless of pod, then play on the traditional championship weekend, and the winner takes the 4th and final playoff spot. I see an initial problem with this. What are your thoughts?
I do think you could see something like this, develop when we move to the playoff format that has 4 automatic spots for the Big Ten and the SEC. I think they're going to get creative with, sort of a Big Ten kind of championship weekend playoff, play in almost. I think we're miraculously not that far away from that. As far as exactly what it looks like I think Scott's probably on the right track. But Mitch, what do you see in there?
Tiebreaker hell is what I see in there.
Yeah.
If 6 schools divided into 3 pods, you got a couple of them that are 7-2 or 8-1.
So what I love,
you start,
I came up with this, and it worked because if you have 18 teams in the Big Ten, you could sort of do it this way, but it doesn't decide enough spots, and the rest of them are sort of wild cards. But basically, if you're doing 3 pods divisions, right? You have each of the pods play all of the teams in their own pod.
Yeah.
So you have a defined winner of that pod. It's like divisions. You win the Big Ten West, you go to the Big Ten championship game. And then for the remaining spot, the remaining 1 spot in that gets a Big Ten bid to the college football playoff, that is sort of a wild card. You could do something like that. I think we're just getting closer and closer to really defined formulaic playoffs, right? You have to do this to make it to the playoff.
Where the non-conference season means nothing, or you're going to have to. I think in this situation you have to expand the number of wild cards available, or you risk September just being like exhibition football, and that's not what people want to see. Even if you did like an SEC Big Ten scheduling arrangement and Nebraska played Texas, you're going to want that to be a big game. How is it going to be a big game when it has no impact on your conference standings?
100%.
You're going to have some at-larges. You're going to have some kind of space to make the playoff that's not determined entirely on your conference finish. And to go back to my initial concern with Scott's format, and I think with the one that you mentioned too, there's this concern right now. The tiebreaker, you can run into trouble with it, where you have to start going into the 3rd and 4th ways to break ties in only one scenario. The top 2 teams in the league right now make the Big Ten championship game. So if you've got a tie for second, it can get hairy in trying to figure out, hey, when they went round robin with these 3 schools all, we're 1-1 against each other. Where are you going to go to points allowed? You're going to go to common opponents. If you've got to do that at the top of 3 different pods, and you've got to do it in a situation where you're trying to find the 2 teams from the whole league who finished in second place, whoa, you're going to run into, I think, a controversy every year. And at some point it's going to get ridiculous, because you're going to be down to almost the coin flip portion of it to determine who has a chance to play in the playoff. And that's not what you want as a conference.
Yeah. At that point, you probably just go to playoff ranking, whoever's got the highest playoff ranking.
And then you get back to the subjective part of it. We can just go full circle and have a computer ranking to computer determine it.
Bring back the BCS. What an idea, Mitch. Excellent idea.
Yeah. To Shane on email, he says, is it time to expand the NCAA basketball tournament again? In 1985, throwback, approximately 21% of D1 teams got in. It's now a little less than 19% because of the growth of the sport. If they went to 80 teams, that would be approximately 22%. How do you feel, Connor, about an 80-team NCAA tournament?
Shane, it is definitively not time to expand the NCAA tournament. As we have mentioned during the show, I hate change. Like I didn't like it when they went from 64 to 68 several years ago. Like the first four thing, like, and then we have 16 seeds play in those games too. Like just know that every expansion that we do of the NCAA tournament is going to allow worse teams into the NCAA tournament, less deserving teams.
It's very logical
into the NCAA tournament. Like we look at all these bubble teams and hell, like you guys know as Nebraska fans, if you're Nebraska basketball fans, you look at your team and you're like, God, our team sucks, but they're going to make the NCAA tournament. And you look around and every other bubble team has gigantic warts, and whether it's on their resume or the way they play basketball or whatever it is. Like if you let more teams in, you're just doubling and tripling the amount of those teams that get into the NCAA tournament. And then once you clear the deck and you're in the NCAA tournament, there's of course a chance that those teams win, right? Like you don't want to see those type of teams win if or go deep into the NCAA tournament if you are a basketball fan. So no, Shane, it is not time. It's not time.
Are you revolting against the idea that your daughter is moving from eating baby food to solid food? Are you like, no, you can't do that. Cheerios are bad.
It's not time yet. Why are you talking? Why are you moving around? Why are you growing teeth? Please stop.
Yeah. All right. Well, I have nothing else to add. We got one more question, and then I want to save a couple minutes to talk about what's going on this weekend in Nebraska sports. From John on email. John had the question last week asking us how many other teams in the power conferences had never won an NCAA tournament basketball game, and I was convinced he was trying to troll us. So he says,
right.
Oh, no, I legitimately had no idea that we were the only team. I didn't see it coming that you were going to think I was trolling you. I'm a Nebraska native, having spent my whole life in the Lincoln area. I believe I typed that in wrong. Part of his life in the Lincoln area, not my whole life. I just don't follow college basketball and figured it would make a good topic. I didn't realize that it doesn't come up because we're too terrible and depressing to speak about it out loud.
Yeah. Thank you for the follow-up, John. It is famously they're the only team to not win an NCAA tournament game.
I'm glad we got clarity on that because I was really curious last week.
Yeah. Okay. Those are some good questions. What do we got coming up this weekend, Mitch?
Yeah, what's going on? Speaking of basketball, Nebraska's at home on Saturday. The Minnesota Golden Gophers are coming into PBA. Any thoughts on that? On the importance of that? We've kind of stopped talking about Nebraska basketball after that game Monday night against Michigan. I think people are like ready to move on, just done with this team, even though they're still in contention for the tournament. But I guess a chance to get back on the good side of fans on Saturday against the Minnesota team that's been pretty decent this year.
Can't lose. Can't lose.
Must win.
A bottom tier team in the Big Ten at home on a weekend. With your life on the line. Can't lose it. That's for sure. Baseball goes to Frisco for 3. Sam Houston State, LSU, and K-State this weekend. So a chance to test themselves against some very, very good teams down there.
One of those 3 opponents stands out a bit among the now Sam Houston State has had Nebraska's number historically. I saw the statistic in looking through the notes of one Jared Meister, the Nebraska baseball media relations contact. The Bearcats with a K are 9-2 against Nebraska all time. And they've been some ugly games. Like they're always early in the season and Nebraska's down in like the warmth of the Houston area. This week it's in the Dallas area. And Sam Houston State is just like, get out of here with your cold weather junk. And they just smoke Nebraska. Back in my days of long ago of traveling around with the Nebraska baseball team to cover them for the Omaha World Herald, there was a tournament weekend or a series weekend that I spent with Van Horn's team, with Dave Van Horn's team down in Houston to cover Nebraska playing Rice. And Rice was like a perennial power at that time, and Nebraska was trying to get to that point. And then I went home when the Rice series was over, Nebraska fared all right, I think, against Rice, and then the Huskers went and played one more game at Sam Houston State and got blasted. So, but yeah, LSU on Saturday, Nebraska's got Ty Horn on the mound against the Tigers, who have one loss. The Tigers are just that loss to Omaha. That's
one
it.
loss to UNO. Yeah.
On the season. So not something that has probably ever been spoken before, but
awesome.
That's coming up, and Kansas State, familiar opponent in the Wildcats on Sunday in Frisco. So important weekend for Nebraska, coming off that 2 or 3 losses at Louisiana last week.
Yep. Got to hit it a little bit. Haven't been swinging it well enough the last couple weekends. Thanks for making Locked On Nebraska your first listen today. For your second listen, check out Locked On College Basketball. Isaac and Andy have you covered. Don't wait for March. You could be the most informed college basketball fan right now. They might even tell you that Nebraska's never won a tournament game before. Find Locked On College Basketball on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts.